But first, more cracks are now appearing within the Albanese government after 3 Labor senators turned on their own party's immigration bill. The Australian today reported that Labor's Raff, Ciccone, Jess, Walsh and Tony Sheldon were part of a nonpartisan committee that tabled a list of concerns about these rushed laws just last week. The Prime Minister Anthony Albanese today downplayed this internal pushback.
We put forward practical legislation before the Parliament to deal with the gap that has been there in the legislation for some period of time. And I'm surprised, frankly, by the coalition and their response. I note that there's been no criticism of substance.
OK, let's bring in now Sky News host Steve Price and former Speaker of the House, Bronwyn Bishop. Welcome to you both. Great to see you, Bronwyn.
Thank you.
Look, Steve, what does this mean for Labor that we are now seeing public reports that at least 3, we don't know the extent of the discontent, but at least 3 Labor senators don't agree with the Prime Minister's own legislation?
I think what it shows us, Sharri, is that they're going to tear themselves apart over this legislation. I mean, can you imagine, if this was passed and if it gets through the Senate, you're going to have the situation where Giles, the minister, can actually ban a complete country from entering Australia. Imagine what the left of the Labor Party are going to do when Iran or Iraq or another country is completely banned from coming to this country. They're just going to go spare. And that's why you're seeing this pushback from these 3, and there'll be others within Labor who are also saying, we can't go through with this, we just can't do it. And the timing's going to be fascinating because if they don't recall Parliament, the High Court decision could come down before Parliament comes back. And of course, in that situation, depending on which way it goes, we could have a whole lot of other unsavoury characters released into the community. So Labor has really backed itself into a corner here, and I'm not surprised they're getting pushback from their own senators.
Look, and it is 6 weeks until Parliament resumes. Bronwyn, what do you actually think about these laws? They are controversial. They're being opposed by the left of the Labor Party. They're being described as Trump-style legislation. What do you think about them?
Well, one of the interesting things said in the Scrutiny of Bills report was that they were concerned about mandatory sentencing. And that's the 1-year compulsory sentence for someone who refuses to go back. Now, I've said before that one of my concerns about the legislation is that it could actually act as a pull factor, that the people smugglers who look at everything that happens here could say, well, you've only got to do 1 year, maybe 5, but then it's now going to be judicial discretion. If that gets changed, it's worth a punt. Refuse to go. It doesn't matter if you get sentenced to a year.
You do a bit of jail time and then you get to live in Australia for the rest of your life.
Exactly, and because there's no guarantee that it would be a year after year after year if they continue to prosecute them, they'd say it's worth the punt. So I think there are a lot of things that needed to be looked at in the legislation, and the idea that you could give Giles so much power when he'd be totally unwilling to exercise it, in my view, because we know his background and that he really wants these people to come in and stay.
Yes, yes.
So I think I agree with Steve. They have backed themselves into an awful hole because at the end of the day, they get out there and say that we're protecting the borders just as the coalition did, but they're not. They never will be because they don't believe in it.
No, and they got rid of Mike Pizzullo, who was actually protecting the borders, and now they want to strip him.
Exactly. Now this punitive, bitchy action to try and take his order away, I think is just a disgrace.